Hey guys, I definitely know what is correct. Like what you sort of we haven't, I believe, is correct at this time. But I took a walk. Here's the thing, right? There's the last time we realized there's a giant our amazing like New Earth synchronicity thing that is just brings amazing how things work out to where we would be able to focus on something. Um, There's like a major storm system moving towards the southeast of our country, where New Orleans, where place I live, New Orleans is located, and it always every time you see that graphic, I'm reminded of Katrina. Um, then, but what the topic that's like in our current events is the sort of what appears to be some kind of evil between the way in which people are perceiving not it's not just what's happening to the economic disadvantage, but this evil political sector of our society that like wants unemployment taken away, food stamps taken away, claims that's part of I don't know like a political program to do such things. That's so and okay, right. So right off the bat, and I was telling you something amazing happened in New Earth, like brought me back to something that happened, but what to the time in during 2006, which is when Katrina happened. Okay, so wait. Well, here's the thing. The way I mean, first of all, the fact that there's opposition to things that would raise, they have to raise the minimum wage. How could be opposition to that? But no, of course, there's something even sicker. They simply can't. They don't want to extend unemployment to people who are basically there's no work for, and the work is doesn't do pay if it pays minimum wage. They do better on. I mean, there's no work. I mean, there are tent cities, but there's pressure on the one party can't get even assistance and extended to the desperately poor. I mean, they can't because that's opposed by not just the part of the Congress, no, and the whole part of the country, and apparently part of the investor class that perceive that that's I don't know, like that they accept that as okay. Well, the thing is, make a huge amount of the poor, a huge amount of the poor and homeless and people who are being harmed right now in this way are African American. And I happen to have been living in New Orleans, although I left before the hurricane hit. But that was the time I was living in New Orleans up to 2006. And what happened there when that came on the news and people saw that dome and saw what was happening and that the people who were asking for water, instead of water, they said, instead of water, we got men. They sent men with guns. Okay, so that it's like that. It's you sort of your one thing you know about your friend is that's something that was a thing that it was a big event the whole country watched, but that has your friend here was what lived in New Orleans, and even at the time. So like today will be the time like we never did talk about Katrina. But when I went, but the thing is like when people have, see, I want. I said, well, I don't know. I don't know what I'd say about it because like people don't. Okay, one way in which people don't live in reality, like in our country, is that they don't actually realize that this is not a place. In a lot of ways, the whole country is what poor African a lot of population of people live in the ghettos in New Orleans. Like there's an expression they use for what the place they're living in is, but it could be extended to all of America. Really, they called the city that care forgot. Care and compassion forgot. That what's the point? I mean, but what happened in that when people saw what happened at the hurricane and they saw a giant population of people who couldn't leave town when the hurricane was coming, they don't have cars, they were herded into the football stadium, and the way in which they were being treated and the fact that then they were desperate People didn't have their cancer medication. But they also didn't have water, but no one was bringing it. But the military came in, and people were desperate and not being helped. And it was an entire population of people who are abjectly poor and who are African American, and the way they were being treated and the lack of any response by our government was very alarming to people. They were very alarmed. They said, I don't feel like, how could this be happening in America? Right, the thing is, like, people don't, a lot of what's taking place is, and one reason, there's a lot of things that are going on all the time in reality that people don't know about or are aware of. So when they see something, they say, "What's going on? Like, is this the country I live in?" And like they don't really know about the country they live in. So it's very hard for me to talk about something so tragic because the fact is nothing that happened at that time. It's still very painful for me to think about what happened to those people, but the main thing is that I was aware when it was happening that's what, it didn't surprise me. Because, it didn't surprise me because I'd been living in a place where, it's very hard to talk about something when the people who talk about such things, like, they're always sort of, they don't understand they don't know somehow that it's a place that the poor are treated like crap and where racism is rampant, and it's that kind of country. Like, people don't really know it, and they think people who talk about it are like some kind of like person who's like a bleeding heart, or like a person who's there are all kinds of pejorative terms used for the type of like Americans who sort of are concerned about the poor, or concerned about mass incarceration. But like that part of it is part of the problem is that you don't have to be. Part of the sickness of our political class and the way people think in the country politically seems to be that the attitude or emotion or the feelings play a role in the politics. That is to say, like, sensitive people are like, or like there's like oversensitive people, and then there's people who are like down to earth and into the real world or in business, all business, and then there's these bleeding hearts. Like, the people divide out into these unreal political thought disorders that has something to do with like attitude or feelings. And that's how the political. That's what if you add, what is this liberal conservative divide? It's largely emotional, psychological. When people like me look at it, there's only one reality. But why is it that part of the sickness of it is that while it is true that like you don't have to be a person who's particularly concerned about anybody else but yourself to still know about reality and say what's right and what's wrong. In other words, like when I say they have to raise the minimum wage, I don't perceive that I'm very sensitive or that I'm concerned about people making minimum wage, but it's just rational and the right thing to do, that it's simply no longer acceptable in a rational sense. How could you afford to eat on the minimum wage? It has to be raised to something one could live on. $15 sounds like a good number to me. But anyways, does it have to do with my leaning one way or the other politically? No. Am I sensitive or not sensitive? No. They have to raise the minimum wage. That's common sense and the right thing to do. But anyways, our country is sick in this way where they don't understand. So when Katrina happened, a lot of people discovered that particularly in that part of our country, that there's a kind of way in which, first of all, there's a level of poverty they may not realize existed, but on top of it, the way in which such poor people, African American, are treated in such a situation by our government would indicate there's been like no progress in some, there's been no progress and they had no in these parts of the country. But the thing is, there hasn't really been that much progress in other places. It's just people aren't overtly as racist, but the truth is there's a mass incarceration taking place, largely of poor African American people. That's happening everywhere. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Oh,
Not today. No, thank you. By the way, I don't want to say this is the poor people in our country. There's all different ethnic groups, races, people. But I'm saying to the degree that what happened in this synchronistic thing brought up Katrina. That's why we're speaking of poor African American people, but we could extend this to poor people generally. That it appears in our society at this time that the poor and disadvantaged are sort of it's what we it's as though we have a what Foucault calls it seems like they perceive they have a disposable, but a bunch of people no one cares about or doesn't want to help or is angry that they are even present and wants to harm them. That's what it seems like the attitude is in the richest country in the world. But I don't know what to say because I don't know how to break through so many layers of political sickness to get to the part about we should care about the poor and that things are going on all the time that you're not aware of till you see something startling on the news. But I don't even know if this is the right way to say it. I don't know what to say when I don't know what's wrong with everyone, really. Not really.